Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to Heartbeat. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Heartbeat, Prosperity in Black America. It's our launch onto Converge Media. We are so happy to be here this evening and so happy that we have joined this media group who is helping us reach a larger audience and to reach out into our communities across the country. Tonight's show, we have a lot scheduled for you tonight. For those of you who have followed Heartbeat over the last few years on radio, you kind of know what the show is about, but let me give some background to our new viewers about Heartbeat. So Heartbeat started in 2018. It started as a whim. I had never intended being on radio or TV. And I call it Heartbeat because I talk about the heart condition of this country that is impacting Brown and Black people. My work through my business, my consulting firm, has focused on racial equity and providing access to Brown and Black America. Over the 5 years of being on radio, we have talked around a myriad of topics, and we're going to increase and laser our focus on Black America. Now, for those of you who've heard my show, you know that the issues that I talk about and bring forward are issues that a lot of American people suffer from. Black America is what I categorize to be the least of the anti-Blackness, the hatred, the racism that Black people experience is by far the most egregious race of people that the focus needs to be on for our prosperity. And so I have continued to have conversations both through business and through politics, of which I had never planned on talking about political stuff. But here we are, because political power is, in my view, where we need to give greater access to Black people so that we can get public policies in place to help us gain access to wealth and housing and healthcare and all the issues that Black America suffers from disproportionately. And so that is why Heartbeat exists, is because we talk regularly about these topics. Now, over the last few years, I've had a myriad of co-hosts on with me. I've added some phenomenal women to this conversation every week. These women are experts in their field. They are known in our communities, and they're going to add a whole different layer of conversation to these topics. And I'll be bringing them in a little bit later in the show. What we have for you in the first half of the show is the newly elected chair of the Black Caucus for Washington State. He is also the state representative in the 11th district. I want to welcome in Representative David Hackney to Heartbeat's launch onto Converge Media with us tonight. So let's bring David Hackney in with us. And there he is. David, welcome back to Heartbeat in a different platform.
Thank you. Yeah, this is probably my third or fourth time on Heartbeat, but I'm honored that you chose me to be on your first show with Converge Media. So thank you very much for that honor.
We're happy to have you, and we want you to, we're honoring your election as the chair to the Black Caucus, but we want to hear from you about your thoughts, your plans, your vision for what you feel the Black Caucus will be focusing on in our legislative session, which begins next week on January the 9th. So I'm happy to have you in to talk to our community about your priorities and what you see the Black Caucus aims to achieve in session this year.
Well, thank you very much. I'm super excited. I'm coming into this role as chair of the Legislative Black Caucus at a unique time. We have never had this many Black legislators, 9 in the House and 2 in the Senate, at a time where we'll also be meeting in Olympia. My predecessors have had to deal with far fewer members, and my immediate predecessor, Representative David Harris, had the additional burden of being chair of the Legislative Black Caucus while we were remote. So given this unique opportunity with this size of our caucus and that we are all present in Olympia, I have 3 major goals. Number 1, to leverage the power of 9 Black members of the Legislative Black Caucus. Our caucus has, the House has 98 members. There are 50 Democrats. And with our 9 votes and 1 additional, we have the power to, stop any legislation that we choose. Of course, we're here to work with our Democratic colleagues, but it does show us that there is a real opportunity. Secondly, we need to do more to build transparency and communication with the Black community. It is going to be a challenge. Unlike some of the other major lobbying groups like Labor, who have a permanent presence in Olympia during the session, we're going to have to use technology and find a way to communicate and get feedback from the Black community, both through the major organizations and individuals throughout session. And third, we're going to need to attract allies, both individual members of the House, most likely Democratic Caucus, but anyone, and also other organizations who will work with us to help leverage the power of the 9 members of the House and the 2 members of the Senate. We have a remarkable caucus. We have Representative April Berg, who in her 2nd session has been selected by her colleagues to be chair of the Finance Committee, one of the most powerful committees in the House that deals with all revenue and taxation. It is almost unheard of for someone in their 2nd term to be given that honor. We have former chair of the Legislative Black Caucus, Jamila Taylor, who is the deputy caucus chair, which puts her at the leadership table. The leadership table is the speaker, majority leader, caucus leader, floor leader, whip, and their deputies. And they are, in essence, the executive team for the House of Representatives. And to have Jamila Taylor sitting at that table, helping to guide both the agenda as well as other issues in the House is remarkable. We also have, some members with who are gaining in seniority. Representative Melanie Morgan, who has been really active in the cannabis and other areas. We have Representative Deborah Entenman, who has been a leader in working on police reform, along with many other areas. Both Representative Morgan and Representative Entenman are also former chairs of the Legislative Black Caucus. We have in addition, we have our 2 freshman members. We have Representative Shapalo Street in the 37th, who comes with a wide range of corporate experience and a very progressive mindset. We have Representative Julia Reed in the 36th, who is a former member, appointed member of the Obama administration, who, as well as a former chair of the 36th Legislative Democrats. Let me make sure I'm not missing anyone. So our 9 is going to be is a very powerful group. In the Senate, we have Senator John Lovick, who has over 20 years in the legislature, former Speaker pro temp in the House, who has recently moved into the Senate and is serves as a mentor and really a role model of what a legislator can be to so many of us. We have Senator Tawana Nobles, who was recently elected to the Senate and has already ascended to a leadership position as the whip of the Senate. As the whip of the Senate, she is part of the leadership table in the Senate, and she is responsible for doing the vote count for the leader of the Senate, Leader Billig, as well as helping Leader Billig influence members to vote in a certain way. One of the main leadership positions in the legislature is the whip. And Tawana Nobles, another one in just her second term, has ascended to this position of leadership. So we have a wealth of riches. The question is, can we get ourselves into a position to leverage that power to actually impact with Black communities? It's not enough to say Black Lives Matter. It's now time for us to do things that matter to Black lives. So we are going to be identifying an issue area and several bills, and we are going to bring those bills to House leadership, and we're going to let them know that the Legislative Black Caucus and our allies are expecting the House leadership to help us move these bills and issues through the House, the Senate, and to the governor's desk. I believe that the powers that be are looking for the Black community to step up and explain what we want. I think we can do that now.
The Black community, the Black community has stepped up, and this is kind of the basis for this conversation and these shows, that Black people have and are at a point in our lives where the focus for any session should be a discussion of equity. And when we talk about equity, and I can break down several of the different categories to talk with you about, and I know we have limited time to do that. But when we think about things like wealth generation, it's one of my peeves. Access to education. You mentioned Representative Morgan is working in the cannabis space. Are we prioritizing giving licenses to cannabis to Black people? Like, what are some of the issues that you think, as the chair, that we should, if there were 2 or 3 top areas that you feel that the Black Caucus should focus on to help change trajectory for Black people, what would those 3 areas be in your view?
In my view, well, first of all, I'm happy to answer that question, but it's not, as chairperson, it is not going to be my 3 priorities. It's going to be the priorities of the caucus. So our goal is to have dialogue with the community and then come together as a caucus and identify what to prioritize and to focus in. One of the things I think that would be very helpful and have an impact on Black people's lives is sentencing reform. Mass incarceration is a huge issue in the state of Washington, which has no parole. We have a clemency bill that we have brought forward many times. And one of the issues is that bill has not been allowed to go through the Rules Committee to the caucus to vote on. And so that's the kind of thing where we can leverage our power. I have a couple of other sentencing reform bills that, in essence, are reducing what I call draconian sentences, where we are locking people away for literally the rest of their lives without taking into account the changes they've made to ensure that not only would they be safe in the community, they have a lot to add and contribute to our community. With housing, there are hundreds of issues. The question is, what can we as a group come together and prioritize and really put pressure on House leadership to help pass? So it's not that we don't know all the issues. It's the question is, do we have the ability to come together as a group and to present, starting off with, given our first time, we're probably going to look at one issue and maybe 2 to 3 bills. And that is going to be for the caucus to decide. Like I said, as a former prosecutor, I think sentencing reform, repeal the death penalty, all of these kinds of issues have a disproportionate impact on Black people. We have issues of education. We have issues of how, both financing of public school systems. We have issues of whether or not we need to support charter schools and what impact they have on Black children. We have issues again on housing. We have issues on behavioral health and access to healthcare. We have access of environmental justice. In South King County, we have some of the worst air quality in the state, and it's a majority immigrant area. But the important thing, this is not about self-promotion of individuals' bills. This is not about getting my bills passed or getting another member's bills passed. This is, can we find an area that has a huge impact on the Black community that we can leverage our votes and the votes of our allies to make a difference in Black lives this term? That's my vision of what we can do as a legislative Black caucus in 2023, with 9 members in the House, 2 in the Senate, all in Olympia, working together to improve the lives of Black people and brown people.
I appreciate that. David, I think at this moment, what I want to do is I want to introduce and bring in my co-hosts in, because I can imagine that they might have some thoughts for you as we meet regularly and talk about some of these different issues. Let me, because I haven't introduced them yet to our audience, let me introduce them in so that they are able to contribute to this conversation as well. So let me first introduce in Stefani Coverson. She is the owner of Jame Pay Consulting. It's her firm. She has a significant background in corporate America as a former chief people officer. Let's welcome Stefani in with us this evening. Stefani, are you there?
Hi, good evening. Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us. Secondly, let me bring in Erin Jones. I think many of us in the Seattle area know Erin Jones. She is a consultant, a speaker. She's also run for public office here in the state of Washington. Erin, welcome to the show this evening. You have been on with me in the past.
Thanks for having me.
And then last but not least, you might be surprised at this face. Let me introduce Karen Fleshman. And Karen Fleshman is out of the San Francisco Bay Area. She just actually ran for the San Francisco School Board. She is an activist. Her company is called Racy Conversations. She does a lot in the space of racial equity in the white women's space. So Karen, welcome. You have been on in the past too. Welcome to Heartbeat this evening. And I wanted to make sure as David is talking and sharing his views about, some of the different issues that are hanging out there for Black community, what are some of your thoughts about where you think the Black Caucus should be focusing for legislative session? Erin, let's start with you and hear some of your thoughts
can I
about
interrupt?
that.
I made one of the biggest errors I could make as a chair. I forgot to mention Representative Brandy Donahue in the 44th, who was just appointed last year and elected in her first term and has hit the ground running with probably more bills passed than any freshman I've ever seen. And Representative Christine Reeves in the 30th, who has probably some of the most longest tenure as a legislator, ran for Congress and is back. And I apologize to both Representative Donahue, Representative Reeves. I should have had a piece of paper. I was going off the top of my head, but I missed those two amazing members of our caucus. And so I wanted to make sure I brought that in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David, for clarifying that. They're likely watching the show, so I'm glad you did that. Erin, I had gone to you and just kind of wanted to hear what you heard Representative Hackney discussing his, the lens of all these different issues. I know you actually ran on a platform of education, but can you talk about what your view is about where we think Representative Hackney and the Black Caucus, where we think should be some of the priorities for session this year?
Yeah, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that when I ran for office, well, I had worked at OSPI, which is our state superintendent's office. And part of my work was being in the legislature and testifying. And we had one Black representative at the time. So I just want to acknowledge first out loud, like, thank you to all the Black people who ran and won elections. And it's not easy, Cindi, as you know, it's not easy to run. And so it's just so exciting as someone who's been engaged in that process, who knows the Hill. I live in Olympia, so I am on the Hill a lot. It's just really exciting to see such a significant, we've had a Black caucus before, but it's different when it's two people versus where it is today, and that's really exciting. You know, I ran obviously to lead schools, and so I have a real passion around education. And so I'm excited that education obviously is on the docket. I think, unfortunately, charter schools can get messy, and I worry that sometimes they get more energy than actually fixing the schools that most of our children attend. So I think we've got to really be careful to balance that out. I am not, like so many in the Democratic Party, like railing against charter schools. I think they can be good if we're really intentional and explicit about who they're serving and how we're supporting them. But I worry at times that they get more oxygen than really fixing the system that is impacting most of our students. So I just want us to be careful in that. And then I also think connected to that is our justice system and the numbers of Black men. We continue to incarcerate Black men and women in our state at disproportionately high rates. And I think that's connected to schools, unfortunately. There's a lot of data around, especially in King County, how we are disproportionately disciplining children and sending them into whether expulsion or suspension really early. And we know the data around the school to prison pipeline. And so if we can connect those two things, I would love to see us think about, you know, how do we get out in front of this stuff? Let's not wait till people are already in the system. How do we make sure they don't end up there in the first place? And so that is part of it. It's about education. I know we've passed some legislation around culturally responsive teaching. So making sure that we hold people's feet to the fire. It's one thing to pass bills. It's a whole nother thing. Implementation is a whole different thing. So I think at times we can pass a lot of legislation and pass a lot of bills, but then we don't hold systems accountable to actually live up to those bills. We saw that with the school funding legislation. So I just would invite us and encourage us to make sure that we're holding systems accountable for the legislation that's already passed.
So let me comment about that, Erin, before I bring in next. I'll bring in Karen because she just ran for a school board. I just want to comment on your comments about, you know, being careful about charters. I think that historically, the charters that have existed have been white-led. And so I think we owe it to Black community, particularly because the education system has developed into a prison pipeline for Black children. And we're actually going to be doing a couple of series on education all by itself. I think that we need to be thoughtful about that and not write that off, because I've had some parents on who have it has been incredibly successful for them. But let's bring in Karen Fleshman, because she just ran for the school board down in San Francisco. Karen, what are your views? I'm not turning the show into an education show, but clearly we have Representative Hackney on with us. What are your views? I know you're in a different state than us, and I'm not quite sure yet what the focus is in your legislature. How do you see the need for Black community? And maybe give the community, you know, when people see you coming on, you know, most of my guests, you know, 90% of them have been Black women, Black people, but you have been very active in the space of racial equity down in the Bay Area. So can you talk to us about your work and kind of where you think our caucuses should lean in terms of advancing Black people's lives?
Thank you so much, Cindi, and congratulations on this inaugural edition of Heartbeat on Converge Media. And it's so great to see you, David. I had no idea that you were even elected, and it's so exciting, as Erin mentioned, that the Black Caucus has grown so large in the Washington State Legislature. And it's a pleasure to see you, Erin and Stefani. A little bit about me, the early part of my career was in the immigrants' rights movement. And I was helping immigrants become citizens of the United States when a report came out that said 50% of Black men in New York City don't have a job. That's where I was living and working at the time. And we have almost 200,000 young adult New Yorkers, almost entirely Black and Latinx, who are not in school, not working. So I completely shifted focus to workforce development. I thought the answer lay in job training, connections to employers, and internships. And I did that work for a decade, and during which I really had to confront my racism because I became the mentor to many young adults as they began corporate careers. And in 2014, listening to them describe both a lot of gratitude to have the opportunity to work in corporate America, and yet to describe the horrific racism that they were experiencing on a daily basis, led me to shift my focus to preparing the workplace for young adults of color and stop preparing young adults of color for the workplace. So I founded my company, Racy Conversations, in 2014, and we facilitate workplace workshops on anti-racism throughout the country, including a significant number in Seattle. And as you were talking, David, it just really breaks my heart because I see, Black people have worked so hard to improve systems, to change systems, to get laws passed, to get elected. And yet we know that prior to the pandemic, median Black net wealth was projected to be zero by 2053. And the economic downturn and the impact of the pandemic is only going to accelerate that timetable. And I just feel like the entire system is so stacked against Black people, and it is so difficult for Black legislators to build a multiracial coalition to be able to pass impactful legislation. And then, as you were talking about, Erin, not only to pass this legislation, but to make sure that it is implemented. And to me, it all goes back to, the function of racialized capitalism, that racism is a huge profit center in our economy, and that we've become a society in which 1% control 30% of the wealth, and the entire middle class has hollowed out. And so how are we going to fix that as a systemic issue? And to me, it's about grassroots organizing and really building that multiracial coalition at the grassroots level, which also very much reflects on my race for school board member. But I'll take a pause there because I've said a mouthful.
Those thoughts, both Karen and Erin. For David, look, we know you have a lot of work ahead of you. You referenced that, this isn't just you, this is the entire caucus. So I know you have some alignment work to do with the Black Caucus. As it always is when we're on air, the time goes by really quick. So I'm going to pick up in the second half and dive deeper into some of the things you were just talking about, Karen. But David, do you have any final thoughts before we take a commercial break? Is there anything we as a community can do to help you when you start session next week? So final thoughts?
Yes, thank you. Again, I see this as an opportunity to work for the community. So my goal is to make sure that we as the Legislative Black Caucus, it's not about us, it's about you. It's about getting your feedback as to what these issues are. Unfortunately, we can't prioritize everything. So there are more issues than we can name. I think, particularly in my first term here as chairperson, my goal is to find an important, significant issue and promote 2 or 3 bills, and then, ask the community to hold us accountable. right? Here we are in January making a pledge of what we're going to do. And I think we need to be held accountable about what we actually accomplish. Again, it's not just saying Black Lives Matter. It's what you do that actually matters to Black lives. We are done with complaining. We are done with blaming others. It's now time for us to take action and to leverage the power that we have with the numbers that we have and actually get something done.
Representative Hackney, thank you for coming on and giving us those, your high level. We are likely going to reach out to you probably around this time next month when you're 30 days in. I think it's a 120-day session this time. So if it's okay that we check in with you, this is a platform to talk with our community. And so we appreciate you coming on. To our audience, we're just going to take a quick commercial break and we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
That up in Saks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah.
COVID-19 hurt my income, my health, and my family. We were about to lose our home when we heard we might be eligible for homeowner assistance funds from the government. We called 1-877-894-HOME, and a housing counselor stepped in, talked to our lender, and saved our home. Federal funding details at washingtonhaf.org. That's washingtonhaf.org.
Will you marry me, baby?
Yeah.
Let me put this on you.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Trey Holiday. We're bringing back Black Love When We Met. That's right. We need something to warm all of our hearts and to elevate love once again in our communities. We want y'all to go to whereweconverge.com/Black Love so y'all can nominate your favorite couple for the next rendition of this show with me as the host. Let me sit down and have them on my couch and share how their love can inspire us all. Make sure y'all go and get your nominations in today and be on the lookout for Black Love When We Met coming at you on Converge Media very soon.
Welcome back to Heartbeat, Prosperity for Black America. I am your host, Cindi Bright. We just spent the first half. Time goes by very quickly when we bring people on. Just hearing pretty high level from Representative Hackney about his thoughts. What he was saying is true, right? There are so many issues in our community, and we are finally gaining power with the addition of now having 9 Black elected officials. Erin Jones had mentioned that both she and I had actually run for office, and I ran in 2018. I think she was in 2016. There were very few Black people running. So we are now starting to gain power. And that's why it is so important for us to be having these discussions. Now, when David was talking about, some of the different areas, my peeve has been the prosperity around wealth and earning power and those kind of systems that will help lift us out of some of these areas. Because when we talk about Black people, we hear organizations or people talk about Black people, they're often referring to Black people as labor. The state of Washington puts out RFPs for contractors and people, construction, and lots of blue collar work. There's nothing wrong with getting our hands dirty for work, but I want to shift the way we start to think and talk about Black America as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as executives, as professionals. We are more credentialed on so many levels to hold that kind of power inside of organizations. Now, there's been a lot of studies. I'm going to share with you a few things that I think are really important to break down why this is so important. Let me first show just an overview of what Citigroup did. Citigroup did a study on this 2 years ago in 2020. Citigroup did a study to show the trillions of dollars being lost because of racism in corporate America. Now, you can't help but when you see numbers like that, wonder, how is it that any business is continuing to bleed that kind of money while upholding racism inside of these organizations. There's also been several studies done by McKinsey and Company. McKinsey and Company is a global firm. I did go on their website yesterday to make sure, since they're doing reports on diversity, that they should have a diverse leadership team, and they in fact did. But several studies, the first one they did in 2015 showed, I think the number was somewhere around 35% financial outperformance when both gender and race are included in decision-making processes. They followed the study up in 2015 with one in 2018 that continues to show that this data sticks. Again, in 2020, they did another study showing what's happening as right now, the metric that is highly used to measure diversity progress is gender. And we, as Black America, knows that even in a gender space, that is not necessarily benefiting Black women. Let me bring in Stefani Coverson. I had introduced her in the first half. She is a former corporate America chief people officer. Stefani, will you weigh in on this topic? Because as we, talk about how our community is going to prosper, you have seen firsthand, you have worked in organizations, what's going on inside of these organizations and how Black people, we can talk about Black women, Black people, how we are being impacted inside of these companies. And so when you look at the studies that I highlighted, what are your thoughts about how we can begin and even to talk to our legislators through this show about this topic? What do you feel are some of the issues that we need to tackle in this particular space?
Absolutely. And thank you, Cindi, for having me on tonight. So one of the things that comes to mind for me the most is moving away from performative measurements. So how many folks of color, how many Black folks can we bring through the door? And not preparing an equitable and inclusive environment so folks stay around, as well as preparing leaders to be inclusive people leaders, right? And so this idea of holding tightly to outdated management theories around workforce planning, managing people, middle management, etc. And in my 20 plus year career, what I tend to find is that folks of color, particularly Black women, are over disciplined, over surveilled, over identified as performers that are not performing well. And as you sort of unpack the information and data, that's actually not the case. And so I think really digging into some of the biases and again, some of these outdated management theories, as well as holding not only C-suite leaders, but middle managers, first line managers accountable for moving the needle on efforts to not only build a diverse organization, but an inclusive organization where people are valued. And when we have organizations that operate in that way, they're more likely to be innovative, they're more likely to be better problem solvers. And also, I'll say Business Insider in just a couple of weeks ago put out an article talking about Black women leaving corporate America, and in fact, warning organizations to be mindful because our departure is likely to hurt organizations' innovation, their profit, as well as impacting professional reputation and who wants to work there, right? Because with the emergence of social media and shows such as yours, Cindi, the mainstream media doesn't necessarily get to control the narrative anymore about where is a great place to work.
You know, I appreciate that, Stefani. I could make a compelling argument that the workplace is not going to change. You said you had a 20-year career. I've got another decade on top of you. That whole term, black don't crack unless you're smoking it. I'm just holding it well as I talk about this. But I could make a strong, compelling argument that Black women are not going back into the workplace. And I have too read some of the studies, and I have followed, particularly if you watch what's going on LinkedIn, if you watch what has happened with the policing, the policing of our voices, the policing of us raising issues, and the platforms, the social media platforms that people are now actually able to make money on. You see the migration of Black women going away, and they are not coming back. And I could argue that corporate America is on its knees now because, to your point about, not only the innovation that Black women bring, but the spending power, the consumer power for their products, the fact that we are no longer tolerating abuse by management. And let's be real, I think you would agree with me, there is nothing but abuse going on towards Black women in corporate America. And so this movement of walking away, a new social media site just stood up. It's called Spill. Let me ask Erin and Karen also, have you guys heard of Spill? Do you know what that is? I think you're muted, Erin.
Yep, I haven't heard of Spill, but everything you're talking about applies in education too. I'm actually doing a podcast tomorrow about what you just described in corporate America is also happening in education. And so I've had more Black female friends leave the profession of education after I'm in my 32nd year now of working in schools. I've had more friends leave in the last year. In fact, one of my friends just messaged me now. She just resigned yesterday. She's a principal. And she's like, I just can't, she's in a predominantly white community. She's just getting hate from everywhere. And she came to me last week and said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And her Black husband is like, no, you're not getting paid enough to do this anymore. So I haven't heard of the term Spill, but this same dynamic is happening in education too.
So Spill is actually, they are coining the phrase spill the tea. So it's a social media platform now for Black people. And they have been promoting it and getting funding because our voices, hence why I'm just so thrilled to be at a Black media company, our voices get tone policed and get whitewashed into describing the kind of things we're talking about here on air tonight. Black women are leaving all of these areas, and that is a huge problem from a profitability perspective for corporate America, because not only have they wronged so many Black women that we will not spend our money, if you can't have our money if you won't have us. And that's kind of the movement that is happening that I see going on around the country right now. And it's a significant opportunity for us as a Black people, as a Black community, to mobilize around our power that we have now. So here in Washington State, as we're gaining more political power with the 9 people, as we are walking away from the 9 to 5s and doing much more work in the entrepreneurial space. Karen, what are your thoughts about some of the stuff I'm talking about? Particularly, you're an entrepreneur too. How do you see, what is it that you're observing, and what's happening down in your state with some of this, if you have any information?
Yeah, well, I have a big community of Black entrepreneur women that I'm in touch with nationally, because I've done masterminds led by Black entrepreneurial women, and I know that Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in our country, and this long predates the current wave. Unfortunately, the same kind of misogynoir that they experience in the workplace, they also experience when trying to get capital for their companies. So they are very undercapitalized and under-resourced and really struggle. And, you know, we don't see Black women having big IPOs and becoming extremely wealthy the way we do with white male entrepreneurs, et cetera, et cetera. And what you were saying, Erin, about education, it's the same thing here in San Francisco. I mean, in San Francisco in particular, our school district is failing to pay our educators. They got a new payroll system instituted a year ago, and that was, you know, money was missing, benefits were messed up, hours were messed up, not only for educators, but also for all the folks who work in schools and make them safe environments for young people. And so they are leaving in mass. And it just breaks my heart for our young people. Our young people deserve to have these amazing educators. And no one joins education because they want to, you know, that they anticipate they're going to be paid enormously. They just want to survive and be able to thrive and pursue their passion for young people. And, you know, all of this just really breaks, like, I just feel like the total values of our society are so off. Like, it's all this thing about, you know, Amazon and how can I buy things as fast as possible or whatnot. Like, what is that about? Like, the real value of a society is preparing our young people to have a better life than we had. Not like now young people don't even want to have kids because there's you know, anyway, I could go on and on.
Isn't it interesting that, you know, to your point, Karen, about, you know, lack of investment, if you will, into people, into Black people, into Black women, you know, there is an atonement needed for Black America right now.
Oh, yeah.
When you look every week in the news, look at just this week alone, look at the 1990s technology system of Southwest Airlines, that their primary concern of not investing into a technology that helped people, to help people get to their destination, to their families, they were more concerned with keeping their profits high than they were, and they kept the system until it broke completely down. When you look at Amazon and you look at labor movements organizing across this country, and by the way, every time I go into Starbucks, I ask the baristas, because now on the screen when you pay, they're now asking for tips. And so I've asked every barista, have you received a raise since this tip implementation come? And they said no. And so again, the problem to keep the white men in earning their profits is to punt their problems onto the consumer and push it down. And here we are as Black America, who's statistically still earning, Black women, 53 cents to the white male dollar, and still expected to pay inflation prices for groceries and tip the baristas and 25% tips at restaurants. I mean, I could go on and on and on about why this collision course is here. And so we are at a point now in this society, I don't care what anybody says, if you're a chief executive and you're not having a WTF moment about the departure of us as Black women leaving organizations, the departure of Black educators, here we are. And so my question, you know, one of the things I wanted to ask Stefani when she was talking is, you know, do you believe this system is fixable? Do you believe we can fix it?
So let me say this first. I strongly believe that Black women are the bellwether for the employee experience, whether that be in education, excuse me, nonprofit, corporate America. And so organizations need to be mindful, right? So as Black women, we're typically the ones who are impacted first, right? And so if organizations don't have a care and really start looking beyond compliance, I think to your question, Cindi, typically HR is about compliance. And so compliance is the basement, right? And it is very difficult to prove, and this system is working as intended, that discrimination is occurring because of race, because of sex, because of a combination of those things, or really any protected class. And so if organizations do not address disparate impact in hiring, pay, promotion, employee relations, sort of all of those things that are HR, plus all of those things that are the customer or the program participant experience, there's going to be a world of hurt. And so I think this is really, to, again, your point, we're seeing a WTF moment. And hopefully these organizations are working to pick up, sort of what is happening. Because now we're seeing that Black women are not the only ones talking about, toxic workplaces and incivility and stories of abusive managers. We're seeing multiple people talking about it. And to your point about the Southwest Airlines debacle that we've been seeing, they had ground crews expected to work 16 to 18-hour days in the freezing cold. That's where the system broke down, was at the Denver airport. And so people were not able to swap in and out of those frigidly cold temperatures, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I think organizations are going to see mounting pressure. So that's where I think things are. Is it possible? Yes. But organizations need to act now, and they need to move past the performative stuff that we've seen, like move past sort of the Black panel on the profile picture, and we believe that Black lives matter. Show us that they do.
Final question to all of you to weigh in on. We just got a few minutes left here. It's kind of a twofold question here. First, have you guys seen the video? I saw it on Viola Davis's Instagram, but it's a group of young Black girls all wearing their natural hair, and they're in a circle, and it's an empowerment circle where they are affirming, I am beautiful, I am smart, I am, building confidence in Black girls to come into the world and slay. I think that's one of the biggest fears that white America has, is that we as Black women are strong and confident and not moved by their energy of what they are doing towards us. And then, so when we look at that, and then have you been following the Black Women Follow train on TikTok, right? So when you look at, have you seen it, Erin? So Stefani, I know you've seen it. The Black women who have mobilized and are supporting each other, and the Black women figured out the algorithm to how to get us all towards each other and connect it. And the outrage that has created, because Black women are mobilizing together and sticking together and supporting each other. So my 2-minute description of this question is, what are all of your thoughts about, we're watching Black women move this mountain in a way that is unshakable, and they can't come in and destroy it anymore. Where do you think all of this is going to lead here in the next couple of years? Erin,
I don't know where it's going to lead, but here's what I'll tell you. I show up in school buildings with this fabulous afro, and my nails and all 6 feet taller than me, just as I am. And I know that it's really important for me to be in schools with young ladies. So I have been doing affirmations with kids for over 20 years now. It's something that we started every class with. So I've always done that with students, and I taught in mostly Black and brown spaces. I don't know where we're going to be 2 years from now, but I know that white people are afraid. And I just want to offer this. I did a video on TikTok in response to the white woman outrage over the Black girl follow train. And in short, what I say, and I've been saying it a lot in the last couple of weeks, is just because Black women are lifting each other up is not taking anything away from white women. So we have to stop with this deficit mentality. We have such a scarcity mentality in this country that, you know, if I take one piece of the pizza, then that means other people don't know. Let's just make more pizza. Let's create more pizzas. And so I think we've got to push back against the scarcity mentality. We got to push back against the deficit thinking. I think we're in for a fight, though. I do, you know, with the presidential election coming up in 2 years, I think we need to be ready to do more banding together, to do more linking arms, to do more of this kind of conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. Karen, what do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I am so happy. I recently watched Malcolm X respond to the question, do you hate white people? And he said, this is an absurd question. You know, like that we shouldn't at all focus. Black people should not at all think about white people. They should just think about loving other Black people and taking care of other Black people, and let white people, you know, just do whatever it is that they're going to do. And I think that this is a great way to build community and to develop that tenderness with Black woman to Black woman that Audre Lorde talked about, the tenderness that was deliberately taken away from Black women, that Black women have to learn how to be tender with each other. And so I'm very happy and very supportive of this, and agree 100%. It does not take away anything from me as a white woman. It inspires me as a white woman to be more like that, and to be more giving and more connecting and more collaborative.
Stefani, your final thoughts before we wrap.
Yeah, I love the Black girl follow train, and totally agree with what Erin shared, as well as Karen, and also made a video about this. And I just really encourage people, particularly white folks who had a strong visceral reaction about that trend, to really reflect on and dig deep about how is it that Black women uplifting each other equates to denigrating and excluding you. And so there's a lot to unpack on that. And the other thing I will add to that is the TikTok algorithm is white folks follow train. Like, it works as intended. And we have, you know, instances upon instances of non-Black content creators stealing Black folks' dances, content, etc., and getting paid big dollars for it. And so I think there's a lot of reflection that needs to happen, and just moving past, I think, this scarcity mindset, and reflecting on why Black women being in community and pulling together makes them so uncomfortable.
I appreciate this dialogue today. I knew it would be the fastest hour of the day today to talk about this, but, you know, to look to our audience and our viewers, this is what you can expect every week. We are tackling some of these issues. We will continue to talk about these issues that are impacting us as a Black people, as a Black community, and as Black women. So, you know, I just want to take a moment and say thank you to everybody who joined this inaugural show this evening to have a listen to us. We are on air every Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. We'll be back next week here at Converge Media. So have a good week, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody next week.
Thank you, Cindi.
That up in Saks, I favor black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah.
Will you marry me, babe?
Yeah.
Let me put this on you.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Trey Holiday. We're bringing back Black Love When We Met. That's right. We need something to warm all of our hearts and to elevate love once again in our communities. We want y'all to go to whereweconverge.com/Black Love so y'all can nominate your favorite couple for the next rendition of this show with me as the host. Let me sit down and have them on my couch and share how their love can inspire us all. Make sure y'all go and get your nominations in today and be on the lookout for Black Love When We Met coming at you on Converge Media very soon.